Hey everyone, Rarity Dash here. Time for another Patreon-sponsored blind reaction. And this one comes to you courtesy of Pawnee, who has requested that I react to a video called When Jim Sterling Was Sued for $10 Million by Digital Homicide by Jim Sterling. So yeah, I have no idea who Jim Sterling is. Never heard of him. And I don't know who Digital Homicide is either. So, I'm starting off great here. I have no idea what this is about. But, yeah, legal stuff can be interesting sometimes, so I'm interested to hear about the case. Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully this is a good video. I have no idea what to expect, but hopefully it's an entertaining story. Let's get started, though, and find out. Here we go.
Join me, won't you, as we go on a journey.
Okay.
A journey of a game critic sued.
Okay, so he's a game critic.
$1 million.
Well, maybe he deserved it then.
And the game developer that did it. That actually did it.
I guess he's also a ventriloquist, which is interesting. Weird. Well, it's a power, glory, frame rates. Okay, all the important things. Jimquisition.
Do you know what it's like to have a job?
Not
And be unable
really.
to do that job because one of the subjects of your job has hit you with a lawsuit for $10 million.
Oh, wow.
So you keep your mouth shut and you just watch them from a distance and everyone else can talk about them, but you can't.
Yeah.
Because that's basically what the lawsuit was designed to do, as far as I'm concerned. We're talking, of course, about...
Kind of glad I don't know what that is like.
James Remine Jr., who hit yours truly with a lawsuit for $10 million for talking about his shit games.
Wow.
And without further ado, I guess let's just get into it. Here we go. So where to begin? I guess it would be prudent to begin at the beginning, since then
Yeah,
you'll know
that's
how
usually a
it's done.
pretty safe place to begin.
That's how beginnings work.
Yeah.
To bring us up to speed, I'm going to try and provide a potted history of my run-ins with Digital Homicide in as brief a fashion as possible. Here we go. In 2014, I published a first impressions video of a new Steam release, The Slaughtering Grounds, a dreadful FPS cobbled together from store-bought Unity assets that were thoughtlessly tossed into a shitty little map and used blood spatter effects copy-pasted from Google image search.
Wow.
I called it an absolute failure and worst game of 2014 contender, because it was, and the game's developer, then called Imminent Uprising with Digital Homicide as the publisher, got really upset with me and posted a video called Review the Reviewer, where they uploaded my original video with text overlay calling me a fucking idiot, a terrible reviewer, and coining the phrase "I'm Jim fucking Sterling's son" as a failed attempt to parody me. After some petulant back and forth that included us continuing to review each other's reviews, not that I've ever technically reviewed The Slaughtering Grounds, but let's not let reality get in the way of Remine's fantasies. Imminent Uprising / Digital Homicide / James and Robert Remine had my original video taken down by abusing YouTube's DMCA copyright
easy thing to do.
System. Animosity grew between us as I continued to cover their awful games which dribbled onto Steam like pig slop from a sluice gate. Within a 2-year span, Digital Homicide would create more than 20 games, and that number had grown considerably.
Sure, they were all wonderful.
Until the company imploded. Digital Homicide got angrier and angrier, eventually demanding an audio interview that went terribly for them because they concocted bizarre conspiracy theories about me, had very little but name-calling in their pocket, and just lost their shit a lot.
If everyone quits making games, does your job still exist if there's no games to review?
Well, not really.
Well, answer that question direct. Yes or no?
Absolutely no, yeah.
Okay, so
you're absolutely right. If there are no video games, then video game critics and media don't... Yeah,
okay.
Sorry, I'm
hard to argue with that.
By that point there.
I know. Just follow with me. Okay, so if that is the case, just a sec. So I've kind of lost my train of thought there.
Wonderful.
That's all right.
So he didn't have a point after all.
Give you a moment to get it back.
After that, there was further nastiness, a phone call threatening me with lawyers, and blah blah blah. 2 years after it all kicked off, I get a sheriff knocking on my door handing me a lawsuit for over $10 million. And there we have it, Romain v. Stanton Mark I. Nature of suit, 320 assault, libel,
so I guess
and
Sterling
slander.
isn't his real name.
The amount demanded in compensation for me doing some YouTube videos and articles about their shit business practices and horrible attitudes toward the general public? $10,761,000.
Okay.
$10 million?
Yeah, that's
This
kind of a lot of money.
Calculated from several separate dollar amounts: $2,261,000 in direct product damage, $4,300,000 in emotional, reputational, and financial distress, and a punitive damage request of $5 million. This all adds up, trust me, to a total of $10,761,000. And if that
yeah, he totally would have had this money if
to normal
his
brains,
video game
very
wasn't
little
reviewed.
of this document, which reads less sensibly than the shit John Doe wrote in 7, makes much sense. Obviously, the charges are spurious, starting weak and devolving into gibbering nonsense the longer it drones on. Digital Homicide's smoking gun, the thing Robert Romain tried to threaten me with over the phone the last time I communicated with him, was their first count of libel per se, where I made an assumption about a Shutterstock image used as art for one of their fucking shit games. In an article titled Digital Homicide in the Case of the Sock Puppet Developers, in which I exposed the made-up companies the Romains were trying to use to publish more games, I apparently stated that Galactic Hitman's artwork was taken from elsewhere, just like the initial art for the Slaughtering Grounds was. Now, the Romains had no right to use the art they used for the Slaughtering Grounds, but James says he bought Galactic Hitman's artwork from Shutterstock. And when you're trying to prove your worth as a developer by posting evidence that you bought your artwork, your official game artwork from Shutterstock...
Yeah, very...
Fucking hell. Now, it's worth pointing out that I never explicitly accused anybody of theft, but nevertheless, I amended my article
all
to
the high-quality
concede the
developers
art I
use.
bought within 40 minutes of publication. That's when I amended it, within 40 minutes. Romain says tens of thousands of people viewed the article in that time, but he has no proof of that, and neither do I. You got to remember, this was the strongest accusation James Romain had.
Wow.
An accusation he seemed to be basing solely on the retraction I myself had published, because the original version of the article existed so briefly that not even an archive of it exists. Yes, my own edit was used as evidence of what James Romain called negligence on my part. Me actually expressing due diligence and doing my job and correcting an article is his evidence that I don't do those things, that I'm not... that
I don't know.
What? I don't get it. I don't know what he is. This was the crown jewel of the piece. An honest mistake I'd made and corrected so quickly that even Romain admitted he couldn't find the original version. The only proof it exists is the fact I admit it once existed. Yeah, I made a mistake and corrected it too quickly for a single snapshot to even exist. And this is the one the Romains tried to intimidate me with before they went litigious. So I've got with me the original document that was served to me in March of 2016. It's in a state of disrepair now. I've been using it to eat dinners off of. I've taken notes with it.
What is that?
Respect for this document in general.
We
talked about some of the more serious allegations, or at least
looks like a very official document.
Thought were the most important. But there are some really, really desperate ones in here that I thought we'd go through together. So, count 6 libel per quad. On September 24th, 2015, the defendant states in the article, being as sly as the wet bandits, comparing the plaintiff to an incompetent thief, parentheses, reference to the movie Home Alone.
Yeah.
That's libel, is it? Me saying that you are as sly as the wet bandits. Me referencing a Macaulay Culkin Christmas film is libel per quad.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Except not fair enough, because that's bullshit. We've got count 7 libel per quad. When not using the plaintiff's given name, the defendant often uses a modification to the plaintiff's last name as Romano, attempting some form of relation to a mob or mafia family. Dash a criminal reference. This is done in many locations and videos as well as the article. Actually, what happened there was because I don't really give much of a shit about you. Sometimes I just forget your name and think it's Romina. But sure, put it in here as a count of libel if you must.
Yeah, that's a lot of conjecture there.
Count 9, libel per se. And I'm just gonna, there's a whole bunch of shit here, but let's just talk about this bit. On September 24th, 2015, the defendant tweeted, according to the email, this ECC Games is pursuing legal action against Digital Homicide for using its name, not enough popcorn on Earth. I did tweet that. I'm not sure how that's libel. They seem to think it's because I'm getting enjoyment from the situation, which I was, because it was a fucking farce. My lawyer countered this, actually, by claiming that we can't prove whether or not there's enough popcorn on Earth, which you can't. I mean, that's basically
that's great.
The allegation here. They're saying Jim said there's not enough popcorn on Earth, so we fired back by saying, prove it. As you can see, Romine's strongest complaints were basically built from fiberglass and balanced on a fucking egg. His weakest complaints were sheer farce. Interestingly, more serious charges are levelled against me in the lawsuit, but not officially listed as complaints, leading me to believe that a lot of this was a rambling and frustrated attempt to just yell in a way that had to be taken seriously and heard. Almost an entire page is given over to a Skype conversation between Romine and Valve, in which Valve made them remove a bunch of greenlight submissions, and that was my fault, according to him, because I shone a torch on what I believed and what Valve must have agreed to be duplicitous attempts to sell Romine's games while hiding Romine's involvement. He follows this up by describing my audience as fanatical, young and impressionable, calling them easy to mislead, and trying to prove my nefarious exploitation of them by quoting this totally unrelated joke I made at the expense of video game journalism. Perhaps this game is telling us something of the nature of player agency. It's more likely not. But if there's one thing I've learned about doing game journalism, it's that you can pretty much say anything about anything.
That sounds about right.
People will swallow it. You just ascribe some sort of artistic meaning to things. Whether that was the intention or not. Someone will believe you. Yeah, this is like that time they tried to prove I was creating an attack force of fans by posting a clip of me injecting carrots with a syringe and making a goof about breeding a violent army of mutants. James Romine's reasonability is underdeveloped, to say the least. So them's were the highlights of the accusatory phase. Let's take a trip to the money zone. Hi, it's me with this piece of shit document again. I thought I'd look at some of the extrapolated elements of the relief demand. This is the money that James Romine wanted from me. We've talked about it in broad strokes, but I will just look at some of the nitty-gritty he's put in here, because there's some fascinating stuff. Again, I'm not reading all of it, just some of the highlights. For example, full reimbursement for 5 years of lost product value at the per game value at time of loss, $19,000 per product at 12 products for 5 years, $1 million, $140,000. Yeah. Something tells me you'd have never made that kind of money off of these games, just at their for sale value. That's just me.
It seems a little bit unlikely.
I'm not a financier. I don't know a huge deal of money, but I do know a lot about shitty video games. And yeah, let's turn a page, shall we? Let's go to emotional and financial distress, including extreme financial strife resulting in loss of quality of life, loss of time to visit with family, immediately upon libel striking, $500,000. Fuck off. We have time. This is the best bit. This is the best bit James wanted money for. Okay? Time lost dealing with this case, the case he brought before me.
Wow.
And research involved, including the almost 1,000 hours the plaintiff spent researching law to represent appropriately. He wants me to pay for him to not afford a lawyer. That's what he wants me to do.
Oh, did he not have a lawyer?
Fucking hell. Reduced game output.
He sued without a lawyer?
Busy Googling how to file a fucking spurious lawsuit.
Explains how terrible this is.
Punitive damages. He wants $5 million in those. And this really exposes to me the motive, the real motive for the lawsuit. It's a punishment to discourage the defendant and all others that followed suit with the defendant's actions from performing similar actions in future. This basically confirms what
I mean, if he had a lawyer,
said to me in a phone call,
would have told him not to do this, I think.
To stop talking
That's
about
pretty...
digital homicide, otherwise they'd sue me. This is what they've wanted all along. They wanted me to just be quiet and let them go about peddling their shite. It's not really my job to be quiet and let them go about peddling their shite, as evidenced when they hit me with this lawsuit, and then I couldn't do a part of my job, my legally protected job. But let's just have a look at the last bit, which, this is a sweet, sweet meat. They want, as part of their relief package, apologies in place of every offending article and video for a period of no less than 5 years.
Wow.
This actually is not legally enforceable, I don't think. This here is just a complete violation of free speech. You can't make me take anything I've written and said and done about you off the internet and replace it with apology videos for 5 years. He wants an apology video in the primary YouTube location on the defendant's channel for a period of no less than, as I say, 5 years. Yeah. And then after that, we got basically, 19, 20 pages of lawsuits, and the rest is evidence.
Oh.
Which you're not supposed to submit at this time. We've just got receipts and proof that, proof that he's lost money and stuff. It's a bunch of graphs, many of which are meaningless. And if you can just pictures. You see that? That's an impressively thick-looking document.
Yeah.
If we take out all the stuff that isn't supposed to be in here, that's actually how thin it is. And if we get rid of all the parts of this lawsuit that are bullshit, well, that's what we're left with.
Yeah.
And that's what arrived on my doorstep in March of 2017. After speaking with some legal advisors, I was referred to the law firm Hartman Titus and lawyer Bradley Hartman. It's worth pointing out that every single person I talked to on my way to contacting Hartman reacted to the lawsuit with a mixture of confusion and contempt at both the accusations and the financial compensation sought. Nobody professional who
what
looked
the
at
hell?
or even heard of this document in
Why?
presence was anything other than shocked at the delusion on the pages. At any rate, once I found my lawyer, it was agreed upon to seek dismissal, as frankly, I have better things to do than be sued by an idiot.
Yeah.
Hartman offered me 3 ways in which we could get this case dismissed, and being the sort of guy I am, I decided we'd go for all 3 at once. Point 1. James Remine filed pro se, without a lawyer, but his allegations pertain to Digital Homicide, an LLC that would require a lawyer if it wanted to sue my hot, wet ass. Point 2. Remine wanted this case to be heard in what seems to be the nearest court to his fucking house, I think, the lazy little cock, and had failed to establish minimum contact, proving I do enough direct business with Arizona to be sued there. Point 3, and it was a very simple point, the case was complete and total fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
My words, nobody else's. Now, the thing about court cases, especially frivolous shitty ones like these, is that they can be really boring. So while there was a lot of stress, a lot of expense, a lot of fiddling and fucking around, not a lot of it's all that interesting. So we're gonna go broad strokes and say that what occurred next was a lot of fucking amendments and responses and requests and back and forth BS that just exasperated the ever-loving hell out of Hartman and myself. James liked to make a lot of weird filings that were unnecessary and senseless and probably something he wouldn't be doing if he'd paid for a lawyer.
Yeah.
Remine tried to establish
Be doing any of this if he
by
had a lawyer.
purchasing a Jimquisition t-shirt from the fine folks at Shark Robot and donating $1 a month to my Patreon, claiming that because he could purchase shirts through a third-party company and patronize my content, again through a third-party company, he had proven that I do business in Arizona. You can't actually just make up evidence like that. That's not actually how it works. At one point, Remine called our side asking if he could email interrogatories or would have to physically send them. Basically, Remine wanted to start asking me formal questions already. We had to explain to James that you do not send interrogatories at all at this stage. That's meant to happen after a case management conference, and we were nowhere near that level yet. To be fair, I didn't know a lot about these processes either, but that's why I had a lawyer.
Yeah, you're not expected to.
Highlight, going back through the correspondence that I've been having over the months for this video, I love the amount of times one or all of us on my end literally said, I don't know what he is doing. I think that really sums up the whole case better than anything else.
Yeah.
Did you, James, at any point know what you were doing? Did you have any idea? I mean, Did you think you were going to get $10 million? Did you think? Did you think? Did you think?
Probably not.
Do you have a fucking thought in your skull? Stuff gets fuzzy and dull around this point until the next big development, Remine v Stanton Mark II. An amended lawsuit intended in part to answer the points raised in our dismissal motion. It was mostly the same drivel but contained one personally fascinating change, an upgrade from over $10 million to $12,550,000. James tried to justify the added millions by citing new information regarding things I allegedly did to damage his products. He whacked another mill onto the punitive damages too, who knows why. At this point I wouldn't be shocked if the fucking fairy frog princess told him to do it. I mean, look, to be quite honest, I've been going back over months of emails and pouring through hundreds of pages of documents, and I'm confused. Even though I was there, months passed.
Wow.
Little things happened, but nothing definitive. Not until January 13th of this year, when our motion to dismiss was granted not fully, but partially. Stopping immediately at our first point for dismissal, the judge basically gave James Remine two choices to try and continue this terrible mess. He'd need to lawyer up and pursue his claims as Digital Homicide LLC, or rewrite the lawsuit to explain how he, James Remine, was personally defamed by yours truly. Frankly, it looked to me like the judge was throwing Remine one hell of a lifesaver, a chance to let this case die on its own. With Remine having just recently failed to sue 100 anonymous Steam users and caused Valve to sever ties, I honestly didn't think James would contain quite the extreme amounts of spite and stupidity required to continue. But I underestimated.
Just suing everyone.
At this point in the proceedings, however, I'd like to take a brief intermission to talk about life outside the lawsuit. See, Digital Homicide has on multiple occasions referred to me as a leech, claiming I sponge off the industry while they actually support it and do real creative work.
Very
During 2016, I rarely mentioned Digital Homicide except in passing, and they went about their business without all that defamation they think I do. I figured it'd be fun if we now looked at what we all personally achieved during 2016 to show our respective ability and creativity without getting in each other's way. Let's start with me. While I was being sued, I invented the copyright deadlock, a method of messing with YouTube's Content ID system to help regain video makers at least a small, if petty, degree of control. It was a move that garnered a fair few press headlines and was lauded for its inventiveness. Kicked off Steam Cleanlight to try and help promote promising games that might otherwise struggle to get noticed among all the lazy, cynical garbage. The video series Greenlight Good Stuff has seen so far a 100% greenlit rate for its featured games, several of which are already out and quite good. Lent my voice to a number of independent games, sometimes paid, sometimes for free, appearing in well-known titles.
He does have a good voice,
as
so
well
I
as
can
lesser-known titles,
understand that.
The recently released Herald and the upcoming Plague
Being sought out for that.
That was being directed by Conrad Zimmerman, who's on the Spin-Off Doctors podcast with me. Obviously, I continue to grow the Jimquisition and the channel and just everything. You know, my business has just been doing great. Even made a short quasi-film thing, Jim Saw, which was very well received and had DC Douglas in it.
Last, I shall become the #1 Boglin boy.
No. Game over!
While they were suing me, Digital Homicide attempted and failed to raise funds for a lawyer through PayPal. Attempted and failed to raise funds for a lawyer through GoFundMe.
Of course.
But so many asset flips on Greenlight that at one point, Valve had to flag them. Many of these games were sequels to each other before any of them had actually been greenlit, and they all looked almost fucking identical.
Wow.
Look at this shit. These are all different games. Attempted to sue 100 anonymous Steam community members and expected Valve to fork their names over. Valve responded by removing all of Digital Homicide's games from Steam, a move that effectively destroyed the company. It's interesting, isn't it, that Digital Homicide tanked itself during a period where I, the man they blame for all their failures, wasn't saying anything about them. No articles, no videos. I just sat back and watched as James Remine willfully and systematically set about tearing his own career to shreds. Tell me, James, at what point do you decide to take any responsibility for your problems? At what point do you look at the one common thread in all of your setbacks? you and at least get curious about your involvement in your own downfall. I don't know if you'll ever find the self-reflection you sorely need.
Probably not.
Not when I look at Romain v. Stanton Mark III.
Still
Everyone
going.
in the Sterling camp was in agreement that somehow, beyond all possibility, Romain had managed to pen an even sloppier mess than the first lawsuit. It was erratic, hard to follow, neither of us could tell what the fuck he was talking about half the time, and the attempts to switch all the accusations from Digital Homicide to James Romain as the sole proprietor of a company I barely even mentioned was a level of desperation I've personally not been party to before or since. And that counts all the times I've tried to have sex. The third dramatic incarnation of the lawsuit recast James Romain as the sole proprietor of MicroStrategic Designs, one of the many companies he conjured up to cower behind.
I have no shortage of company names.
Using a paragraph and a tweet as his evidence, Romain magically spun a new lawsuit to claim that because I factually and accurately found the link between MSD and Digital Homicide, I defamed him. He then listed out the same complaints he made before about all those mean things I said about Digital Homicide because... why? Why? That wasn't the case. And he was ordered to make this not about Digital Homicide. This is supposed to be about James Romain? Hang on.
Yeah.
Fuck me, even left in the bit about the popcorn. Anyway, what really sticks out here is the fact Romain added some new accusations, confirming no matter what happens in his life, if it's bad, he'll blame me. Stunningly, Mark III of the lawsuit goes so far as to allege civil conspiracy. First of all, he says that because I've done voice acting for games I didn't make and don't make money off the success of, I'm a direct competitor to him. First of all, I've got to take an aside to say, James Romain, don't flatter yourself. I will never consider you a direct competitor to me. Ever. In any medium. Ever. He thinks I'm a direct competitor and therefore colluded to destroy him. He claims that I have knowingly orchestrated attack campaigns against him with others. He also suggests I have conspired with the real ECC games in Poland. Somehow. As part of this attack. He suggested Operation Cleanlight and my silly mask-wearing alter ego the Steam Cleaner were knowing references to harassment, and used the lawsuit, a fucking lawsuit, to vent and sound off about the other people he tried to sue, as if it was my fucking responsibility. As incompetence he admits in the text are not my responsibility. Apparently he just needed to waste my time even more by whining about mean things other fucking people did. Okay, let's calm down a little, got a little bit riled up there. I'm actually talking off script right now.
Six Nights at Susie's? Really?
Written, as I do all the episodes, but this is just pure from the
heart,
because I really do want to communicate that this bit of the lawsuit, the bit that I just talked about, is for me the worst part of it. This is the worst part of the 2.5 years I've spent dealing with the Romain brothers. Right here where I'm accused of civil conspiracy and what else did he say in the lawsuit? Like criminal direction of harassment, something like that. The implication that I have been knowingly, surreptitiously orchestrating actual line-crossing attacks on James Romain's person. That, to me, is one of the most offensive things I've ever seen written about me. And I've read a lot of offensive things written about me.
Of course.
The idea that James Romain wants...
I kind of figured that, but...
...for the criticism I've leveled over the years at his games, at his shit...
Why?
...is so offensive to me after that piece of writing became public record. Something I consider to be the most defamatory series of allegations in this entire document. Whatever he thinks I said about him, whatever he thinks I did, if that were published in a paper, that's what libel looks like. Take another good look at it. That is what libel looks like. The other interesting new section is the part about intentional infliction of emotional distress. The actual text isn't interesting, just the usual trash about plaintiff did knowingly do a naughty, etc. But my lawyer informed me that the level of distress referenced is on par with stealing somebody's child and pretending the child had been killed.
Wow.
That's the level of emotional distress Romain is claiming for what ultimately amounts to one article and a fucking tweet at this stage. Oh, and the greedy arsehole also wanted $26,000 now. And whatever other compensation the court would like to give him. And apparently when he's vocally challenged on this, a lot of these allegations so confidently written devolve into, I think Jim did this. Well, Jim might have done this. He might have spoken to Valve. He might have colluded with ECC Games. Maybes, mights, I thinks. What do you think I would do?
Yeah, that's not how it works.
With that sort of argument? Something like this video that you're watching now? Oh, no. This is a birthday party. Enjoy it. It's fun. If you were to drag me to an Arizona courthouse to listen to your absolute nonsense in person, fun wouldn't be on the fucking menu, sunflower. So anyway, at this point my lawyer and Romine had to talk anyway, so they talked. I was not part of those conversations directly, but I can say that after several ups and downs, as Hartman navigated an increasingly erratic, bruised ego, an agreement was reached upon. Sadly, James did not take to my suggestion that I should get the Digital Homicide brand name as recompense for what he'd done with this lawsuit, so that soured things for a moment. But Hartman's reason
Do you really want it?
is to be envied. He simply explained carefully what would happen if this went to court. And we're not just talking about counterclaims, any of the obvious stuff. He explained exactly how this little argument would play out in court. Something tells me the reality of talking to my real lawyer that I actually have made this all a bit too real. Anybody can play lawyer, anybody can file a claim, but there can be consequences for that little game.
Yeah.
And many times over the past year, I've been convinced and talked down from just letting this go to a courtroom and becoming the consequences. And after some more back and forth, including one moment where we penned an agreement to sign and he sent us back a signed edited document without telling us it was edited, like without being stupid, James Romine finally agreed to drop this utter ludicrousness. We both agreed to drop the case with prejudice, which means it can't be filed against me again, and we'd both suck up our legal fees, which I was going to have to do anyway, because let's face it, what does James have? He's a punchline with basic coding ability. He's so wrong that even a lot of people who hate me think he's acted like a buffoon. He managed to tank his own company while the man he blamed for everything wasn't even talking about him, and he's been left humiliated and mocked for throwing a years-long temper tantrum that culminated in several embarrassing messes of legal documentation, and a dismissal with prejudice that actually adds a little admonishing point about how he needs to consider fair use if he ever wants to take down my shit again. And this creature thinks I spend my time conspiring to ruin him?
Of course.
James, mate, I would conspire to have a food truck bring you a bad sandwich.
Wow.
There is nothing I could do to you haven't done to yourself. And more than anything else, at this stage, I pity you. I truly fucking pity you. So James, I gotta ask, is it fair to call the slaughtering grounds an absolute failure now?
Wow.
Some of you may have expected a funnier video. Some of you
were
may
pretty
have
funny.
expected
I don't know.
10 minutes of me laughing. I threw in a little bit of a performative laugh at the beginning for those people, but
I mean, just...
to be perfectly honest, and to back up the statement I published before this video went up, I don't find this lawsuit funny. It's not funny. It's
you're in it. You
disgusting.
spend a lot of money on a lawyer.
It's an incredibly despicable, underhanded attempt to undermine my free expression and stop me doing my legally protected job, like I said.
It's funny from the outside, though, just to see how stupid this guy is.
Me. And it's frustrating that I cannot adequately put into words the contempt I have for what Romine did. I think he crossed the line from a tantrum-throwing, generic Steam dev moron to a truly nasty piece of work. A horrible, horrible little man. And I don't know. I imagined this video in many different ways. I've had a long time to think about it. And, you know, I imagined all of the dramatic speeches I'd give, all of the standing here and posturing, and no. I've done my video. That was my reward for all of this, was just being able to finally talk about it, and I'm done. And as for James Romine, I'm done with you. Unless you want to carry this
He's
on.
probably done too.
I feel like I've been pretty damn lenient here. And I know you listen to that and scoff. I know you're scoffing because you don't think this is lenience at all. You think you're the victim. You think you're the one who's been attacked all these years. You think you're the one who's been nothing but the poor lost lamb being set upon by the wolves. But that's not the case. You started this all with your shitty video about me that went into personal insults instead of talking about the merits of my coverage. You issued me with a DMCA takedown strike. You cajoled me into an audio interview with your brother. Because I've never spoken to James, that's another thing I can tell my
audience. That was his brother.
I've never spoken to the guy.
Interesting.
He's always hidden behind his brother. And yet, he's the one leading the charge on the lawsuit here. For a man who's so angry at me and so victimized. It's funny how, we've never actually fucking spoken. But to talk about some of that, the whole bullying aspect, I get called that a fair few times. I've read all of your little think pieces over the past few months. I've seen the ones that ask, is Jim Sterling a hero or a bully? Very interesting stuff. Fascinating. Adorable, even. But one thing I don't actually talk about very often is just what covering Steam Greenlight has done for me. I've been harassed, I've been doxxed, I've been threatened. Recently we got a very interesting death threat that was caught before the person who posted it deleted it, from an alleged Greenlight developer who said that he and a bunch of other ones were planning to all file spurious lawsuits to try and kill me off with stress. They saw that this lawsuit has, understandably, tired me out a little bit and caused me a fair bit of expense. I won't give you the figure, but, well, it's more than a comic book. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean,
more than
it's a
vintage
lawyer
comic book. And anyway, comments like that are not uncommon. Those kinds of threats, those kinds of attacks, they're not uncommon. Because I'm the only person who really sort of, at least in this strata of games media, who actually puts on the rubber gloves and goes into that shit sewer that is Steam's horrendous fucking Greenlight system, which, thank fuck, is going away, but my work won't be done because I'm sure asset flippers and chancers and all sorts of pricks will continue to infest Steam, and I'll be there covering it. And, it's not the world's most noble job, but it's mine, and I can do it, I should be allowed to do it, and I will continue to do it. And if any fucking idiot thinks they can repeat what James did and somehow succeed, well, you're welcome to try, because I won't show mercy next time, and you will break yourselves upon me. And that really is it.
Okay.
I've spent so long thinking about the cutting final speech I'd give to James Remine. But now that I'm here, now that it's finally happening, it's like I've got a wounded ant in my hand, and I've just realised the energy it spent moving my fingers to crush it outweighs the satisfaction I'd get from doing it.
Wow.
So as far as I'm concerned, we're done. Thank God for me. Not worth it.
Okay. Well, there we go. All right, interesting outro here.
Yeah, Konami's still shitter than Digital Homicide.
Is it? I mean, Konami, they got good games. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what Konami's doing right now, but okay. Well, there we go. Yeah, that was pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know this guy. I don't know Digital Homicide, but I mean, he told the story well, and it's pretty clear just hearing this that this was completely frivolous and just completely stupid, this lawsuit. and just seeing the games as he talked, just like, yeah, no, it's not this guy's fault that your games are not doing so good. Like, yeah, no, that's not the reason. That is not the reason at all. There needs to be a certain level of quality for products to actually sell. And can't just blame it on some guy on YouTube. That's not how it works. Yeah, that was a ridiculous lawsuit. And made for a pretty fun video. I mean, I was entertained, but and I mean, I don't know anything about this guy. I don't know what his normal content is like. I guess he reviews Steam games. But yeah, he was a pretty good host for this, and I mean, yeah, it was pretty entertaining. I don't know, just pretty good video here. I enjoyed it. Hope you liked the reaction. Let me know if you did, and see you in the next one.